Well, Job, and if you want to turn back there to Job chapter 1, Job sought spiritual goals for his children. You know, he was into their lives. He wanted them consecrated. I'm sure he checked out their friends. I'm sure he checked out their life's purposes. I'm sure he instructed them in the way that they should go, as we should. And this morning, if you want children that will be a blessing down the road, then make them a blessing today. Teach them, lead them in being givers, not takers. Lead them in being those who are subject to you. Help them choose their friends. Don't tell them who their friends ought to be. Let them pick them. But give them the right choices and honor in their lives. Job sought spiritual goals for his children. He sought for them to be consecrated. But look, it doesn't stop there. I mean, this is, and we're going to see many elements here in verse 5. The first element was he studied them. And if you don't have time to know what's going on in your kids' lives, you're already, beyond hope. I mean, if your life has got more important things than your children, then it's hopeless. And so you've got to back up and make them important and study them. But secondly, pick spiritual goals. And these are only a few, but I think Jesus growing up are good goals that I shared with you just now. But number 3, Job not only sought spiritual goals for his family and studied his children, but he sanctified his children. Look what it says. It says he arose early in the morning and offered burnt offerings. Job got up early. He denied himself. I mean, this guy was a rancher. I mean, nobody in Texas had as big a ranch as him. He had the biggest ranch, I mean, he was big. He was the wealthiest man in all the East. And that's saying a lot. The East is Arabia all the way toward India and all that Orient. He was the big guy of the whole East. Now, Job lived just after the flood. Maybe there wasn't a lot of competition. But no matter what, God said he was great, and his wealth is staggering if you look at the list there of what he had in his time. But he sanctified his children. Job personally stood as the priest of his family. He personally offered sacrifices for sin in general for each of his children. He didn't know just what they had done, but he offered a sacrifice for them. Job himself was their intercessor. Job sought God for them. Job prayed the Scriptures for them. Job prayed, a great place to do this is in Ephesians. Ephesians 1, you pray for their standing in Christ. In Ephesians 2, you pray that they be ones that are not walking according to the prince of the power of the air. In Ephesians 3, you pray that they measure up to the stature of Christ. In Ephesians 4, you pray that they not have all those things Ephesians 4 talks about, the lying and the anger and all that. In Ephesians 5, you pray that they be submissive to one another. In 6, that they wear the armor of the Lord. I mean, there's a lot of places you can pray through for your children and intercede for them. But Job did this, and he sanctified his children. But I like also a fourth point here. Job studied his children. He sought spiritual goals for his children. He sanctified his children. Fourthly, he saw his children from God's perspective. Boy, is that ever comforting. Don't look at them right now. I mean, wherever they are in the process. I mean, they could be 22 and still acting like a baby. They could be 32 and still making wrong choices. Why don't you look at your children from God's perspective? And that's what Job did. He was not only concerned about externals. Job was looking at them at their hearts, and that's what he was targeting. And he says, if I can just get their hearts. Now, you got your finger here in Job. Turn to Proverbs chapter 3. I want to show you how critical this is. Proverbs 3. 3 verses in Proverbs. Everybody knows 2 of them. But I want to show you the other ones that are so neat in Proverbs 3. Because Job learned to focus on the hearts of his kids. He learned to see them from God's perspective. He wasn't content if the externals were all like little ducks. Some of the most outwardly conforming kids have the most rebellion in their hearts. I was at the largest Christian university in the world for 8 years, and I worked for 5 of them in a dean of men's office. And the problem we had was with the kids that were always like this, They were the ones that were sneaking off and doing everything. It wasn't the ones that would come in and say, I don't like all those rules. Boy, we could work with them. It was the ones that say, hey, it's all right with me. I'll just do what I want when I'm on vacation and when I'm off campus. They just smiled all the time. Those are the wicked ones. Not the ones that are openly struggling. Those kind we loved. We worked with them. It's the smug, hypocritical ones. That's why a parent looks at the heart. You don't just look at the kids do everything that you do and follow. You look at their heart. You see, whether their motivation is right. Look at Proverbs 3, verse 1. My son, don't forget my teaching, but let your heart keep my commandments. And that's what we have to do. Verse 3. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Get them in. You know those little tapes, hide them in your heart. Well, more than hide them, write them. Make sure that they're not hidden so far you forget them. Practice them from your heart. And then that's why verse 5 is so good. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. How do you do that? Verse 1, you keep them from your heart. Verse 3, they're written on your heart. Then you'll trust in the Lord with all your heart. See, Job saw his children from God's perspective. It wasn't good enough that they were Job's kids, that they were the model citizens of Uz. What mattered to Job was that in their hearts, they were truly following God. That should be the bottom line of what we desire in our children. That we see them, as 1 Samuel 16:7 says, God doesn't look at the outward, God looks at the heart. Parents that are following God don't look at the outward, but like God, they look at the heart. And they see whether or not the children are obeying from the heart. Now,